Every now and again, when I go to the refrigerator and I look for something to eat, it happens, for example, that I thought there was a whole new carton of cottage cheese in the refrigerator. And sure enough, there it is, but it's been there a while. And when we first got it, I would scoop out some cottage cheese and put some good salt and pepper on it and enjoy my cottage cheese. After a number of weeks, though, I might grab that same carton, open it up, and green stuff and kind of yellowish and kind of rotten, a little bit moldy and all of that. You know, when things sit too long, they grow stagnant and they mold. And the only thing they're good for is to be put down the garbage disposal. The difficulty is that in pastoral ministry, it's often the case that we get to a point where we think we need to continue to remain where we are, where we stay stagnant and become moldy, as it were. When we're reading through the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, as we talk about this idea of the pastor's life, we come to this passage in verse 35 through 39, where Jesus has just come through some pretty dramatic ministry previously in this chapter, and now he comes to this point where he says, we must now move on. Let us go on to the neighboring towns so that I may proclaim the message. You see, the idea of staying too long in one place can be a dangerous thing. Now, I'm not saying that you should move from where you are right now. What I'd like you to do, however, is to adopt a mentality of living in motion. Not stagnant, but living in motion. Just like Jesus was going to go on to the neighboring towns, so you need to have an eye to the forward motion of your ministry. This is a little bit related to the last session that we talked about, where we discussed the do it again trap. But in this case, I'm thinking about the disposition that characterizes your heart and your soul and your entire life in pastoral ministry. Not to see pastoral ministry as a place that you somehow hunker down and you exist and you keep doing the same things and you stay in the same place, but having eyes for the motion of the kingdom of God through the vessel of your surrendered life. That's the nature of the call of God. God has not called you to stagnancy. He's called you to living in motion. If you think back to when the Israelites were in Egypt, the very thing that was their blessing became their bondage. Now, the difference between Egypt as a blessing and Egypt as bondage was they stayed too long. What was meant for their deliverance over the course of time became the ball and chain around their ankles, became the bondage that held them back from becoming everything that God wanted them to become. Now, thankfully, God can deliver us, just like he did the Israelites, out of bondage in Egypt. And in fact, when we go through the story of the Exodus, it's very interesting that we get another illustration of that when we see the manna from heaven. And you know the story very well. You've preached on it 1,000 times probably. That manna would not last overnight. That unless they picked the manna up and used it in the moment and then moved on, that manna would grow moldy. See, God has called us to live in motion. The ministry of the pastor's life is a life in motion, leaning forward, being the vessel of God's active kingdom, moving forward toward the vision of God for his people, for the people that you minister to. Self-awareness and positional awareness is really important in this respect. It's really important that you have a secure sense of your own pastoral identity, knowing the nature and the condition of the bottom of your iceberg. And then positional awareness, knowing the effect that you have on your people, knowing the effect of what you do and how it influences and shapes the people in your church or your ministry organization that you lead or where you are ministering. So this idea of self-awareness and positional awareness are a top priority in being deployed well. Because it's very easy for pastors, all of us, to grow comfortable where we are, to appreciate the environment, and then to grow stagnant and to remain in the place too long. Now, again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that God may not call you to be the pastor of a church for 30 or 40 years, or to be the singular pastor of a church, or to be the singular leader for a long period of time. As long as the disposition of your life is on the balls of your feet, leaning forward, always in motion, that's what I have in mind as I share this with you. Live in motion. Whether that's a long-term deployment or whether that means coming to the point where you realize, I think I need to move from here. I think I need a new deployment, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Self-awareness, positional awareness are critical in coming to that point. Learning how to open the hand and hold loosely to the titles, to the roles, to the positions that you may have, and willing to release those for the kingdom benefit. That's living in motion. Doesn't mean that you're not committed. It means that you recognize your role as one who is serving at the impulse of God's call, not finding a comfortable place where you can settle in. So as you think about living in motion, I would like to encourage you to take time with your journal and write down perhaps those roles or titles that you have craved in your ministry, and that perhaps you may need to release with an open grip in order to adopt a disposition of living in motion. And may God bless you as you reflect.